Declaring he is, quote, fed up with what he considers bias, President Donald Trump signed an executive order yesterday aimed to strengthen the government's power to regulate social media platforms.
What they choose to fact check and what they choose to ignore or even promote is nothing more than a political activism group or political activism, and it's inappropriate.
The order directs executive branch agencies to ask the Federal Communications Commission and the Federal Trade Commission to study whether they can place new regulations on the companies. Joining me now on Skype to talk more about this is Rachel Bovard, Senior Advisor for the Internet Accountability Project. Rachel, welcome back to the show. So good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
So, Rachel, this order focuses on Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. And for those who may not know about it, can you explain what it is and what it does?
So Section 230 was passed in 1996 to give Internet providers immunity from liability for content posted by the user. So, for instance, Twitter cannot be sued for something that you post. But this statute passed in 96 has been distorted by the courts. It's been judicially manipulated into a bulletproof liability shield. And many lawmakers, including the president, seem to think it needs revision.
I know President Trump says that his action is about defending free speech. However, some critics, including technology groups, say that the changes will actually stifle speech and innovation. What's your take on this, Rachel?
So I do think that reform efforts need to be careful. Section 230 does preserve a lot of free speech online, but I think the president is raising a legitimate concern, which is that this is a government subsidy to big tech, and they've used it to silence conservative voices across the spectrum because they can get away with it. And so there are a number of lawmakers who say, look, we need to preserve free speech online, but to do that, we need to make these tech companies more accountable to the government protection they receive. And the executive order attempts to do that by forcing some transparency and accountability onto these tech companies with regard to how they censor content for conservatives and other groups.
And I know this order also directs the Federal Trade Commission to take action in complaints of political bias. And there have been some long-standing allegations, as you mentioned, of political bias against conservatives on social media. That would seem especially concerning, I think, to both parties in an election year.
It should be concerning. You know, these companies very much are the public square for speech, especially when it comes to our politics. Facebook has even admitted they have the power to sway elections. And so this is something I think that the government needs to be aware of. You know, these companies to a great extent are even more powerful than the government in some regard. So I think an oversight is necessary here to take a second look and say, have these companies become too powerful? Are they a threat to, the free functioning of a democracy? What can be done to review this? So President Trump is taking action, but many members of Congress are paying attention to this as well.
Yeah, and the president mentioned that he expects there will be legal challenges. And today on Twitter, he has said that Section 230 should be revoked by Congress. What do you think is going to happen next?
Well, I think President Trump is shining a light on longstanding concerns from Republicans and some Democrats about Section 230. There's a number of bipartisan bills in the Senate and the House to deal with this. Different approaches, but this is a legislative process at work. I think they're going to continue to get a debate and airtime, and I hope that they do, because this is an issue of significance to, the billions of Americans or people that use these services.
Well, Rachel, before I let you go, any final thoughts on this?
Well, I think this is coming at a good time. We're going up to an election. We want to make sure that this election is free and fair and that people have free speech across these platforms. And I think that's what President Trump is focused on, and a number of members of Congress are as well.
Well, Rachel, thanks so much. We really appreciate your insight. That is Rachel Bovard, Senior Advisor for the Internet Accountability Project. Thanks again.
Thank you.